What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Unorthodox Social Worker, where we do discuss all things social work from an unorthodox perspective. I know it's been a minute since I made a video. Been pretty busy with work, with dealing with this coronavirus in my household, and I've actually been working a lot more on my music. So if you didn't know, I do music. If you wanted to check out my music, you can hit up Spotify, iTunes, Tidal, all that good stuff. My artist name is Sackmaster. That is Sacmasta. So if you did want to check out some of my music, just search that in iTunes, Spotify, whatever. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share these type of videos if you do like this content. Today we will be talking about a very relevant topic. We will be talking about my opinions on defunding the police and police reform. And before I get into this, as many of y'all know, I did grow up here in the Bay Area, San Francisco, California. And coming up here, I was educated from family, friends, peers, mentors, teachers, all of that. The general attitude around here in the West Coast Bay Area is fuck the police. We don't need them. Very liberal, very left-wing view, fuck the police, they're all assholes, fuck them. And that's the way I kind of thought until I actually became a social worker and actually had to start working with law enforcement, both as an outreach worker with homeless individuals and working with individuals on probation and parole. So I had no choice. I had to start working in tandem with law enforcement to complete my job. And that definitely changed my opinion about law enforcement. Yes, a lot of them were assholes and they were abrasive, but some of them were cool. Some of them were actually trying to help people. Some of them, they weren't assholes or trying to help people. They were just trying to do their job. And I do have a video about that if you want to go check it out. But before I get into this, I just want to say I understand both point of views because I was bred and grown up one way to think, to say fuck all law enforcement. And my experiences with law enforcement were never really positive as a kid growing up and as a young adult. So my attitude was fuck the police until I started working with them. And I said, actually not all these police are bad. Some of them are halfway decent. Actually, some of them are pretty cool people. And by me saying that, I'm not justifying, don't get it twisted, I'm not justifying any crimes that the police commit by saying that not all cops are bad. I'm just saying I understand both points of view, okay? Cops have harassed me in my life, and I was educated to not trust them and to say fuck them. So I get it, but then with experience, with age, with time, all of that changes a lot, and I've been able to be more objective, subjective, whatever you call it, okay? So keep that in mind. So I don't think you should defund the police, okay? Totally. You can change. I'm more in the lines of reforming the police rather than taking them away, because believe it or not, the police, in my opinion, are necessary for certain situations, especially from what I've seen, like domestic situations. If there's domestic violence in the household, if there's any kind of abuse, if there's any kind of sexual abuse, if there's crazy things going on domestically like that, then you do need some kind of third party to step in and intervene to protect these kind of victims, whether you think it's going to be the police, whether it's going to be the guardian angels, whether you think there should be some kind of civilian militia, whether you think the gang members should be in charge of regulating the neighborhood, whether it's the police, the gang members, the militia, the guardian angels. There needs to be some group of individuals that will intervene, because there's a lot of craziness going on in people's homes where people need to be, some people do need to be locked up. Now the thing is, whether it's the police that controls this, a civilian appointed force or whatever like that, there needs to be a standard across all of them and accountability. And that's the problem with the police, is there's not really much accountability. They get off every time. they have so many chances to do things. So you do need them, but there needs to be more accountability. The first thing I think that there needs to be is all officers should have a formal education. They should all have at least a 4-year degree. In my opinion, they should actually probably have a master's degree. So I think that all police, law enforcement should have 6 years of education. Most of these cops, you can sign up for the squad, you could graduate high school, be 18, do weeks or months of training, and then be expected to complete one of the craziest jobs you could do out here. So I think if you got 4 years of education, that would change a lot of things. It would make people more knowledgeable about how to complete their job. Okay, I don't want to go too deep into it, but it's my opinion. Every law enforcement should have a degree in criminal justice before you're allowed to be a freaking cop. Okay, that's just my opinion. Second thing is, I believe that as a law enforcement officer, you should only be given a few chances before you're kicked off the squad, like allegations of abuse. If you have about 2 to 3 verifications of allegations of abuse and 1 verification of egregious abuse, you should be kicked off the squad for good. And actually some police departments do work like this, believe it or not. There are some jurisdictions to where if you fuck up 2 or 3 times, you're out. They don't let you come back on that police department. Now the problem is you could get fired from one jurisdiction as a police officer for being too abusive or whatever, and you could just go move to another state or another county and become a police officer there. So in my opinion, there needs to be a federal oversight of that. It should be national. As long as you get 2 to 3 verified complaints of abuse or 1 verified complaint of egregious abuse, you should be kicked off the squad and never be able to be a police officer again. First thing about that is it will just weed out the bad cops. You feel me? Like this guy that killed George Floyd, he had 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 complaints of police abuse. If he was fired after 2 or 3 complaints, then maybe George Floyd would still be alive today. So not only are you weeding out abusive police officers, the police officers, and additionally, everyone else that's a cop will know that, hey, if I fuck up a few times, then I'm going to lose my job. That's going to threaten my job security, and it's going to make cops think twice about abusing their power. Because if a police knows they can just keep abusing their power 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times and nothing happens, of course they're going to continue to abuse people. If you cut that right off at the, nip it at the bud, they're going to be a lot more accountable, and you're going to get a lot of more freaking corrupt cops off the squad. And I actually think they should create financial incentives if you don't have claims of abuse against you. I think that every year you go without having claims of abuse or excessive force, then the cops should get a freaking 1-2% raise, something like that. Anything to incentivize less violence, less abuse, I think is positive. So that kind of goes against defund the police, but that's just my opinion. Now here's the issue with that. Actually in a lot of these more rural, low crime areas, that is the standard for the police. You're only allowed to have, like I said, 2 or 3 complaints and you're off that squad. But in the areas with low crime, it's not like, you need a lot of cops. The problem is you go to, you could say urban or even rural areas where there's high crime and there's a shortage of police. You look at all these cities, they're so short of police that they can't fire everybody that commits abusive behavior, right? Because if cops are committing abusive behavior and then they're getting fired and your police squad is already way understaffed, okay, then you're not just going to fire everybody, because then you'll have no police left to control these high crime areas. So you put that on the responsibility of the police. There needs to be more people that are willing to be police officers, social workers. Social work's the same thing. A lot of times they'll hire anybody because they're so short staffed, and that goes with the police, right? If not many people want to be police and help change the community for positive, then you're going to be left with these freaking abusive douchebag cops that are not going to get fired simply because they need to have their staffing at a halfway decent level for a high crime neighborhood. So that goes on to people too. But then again, some people say, fuck the police, I'm never going to be the police. But if you can't have a applicant pool of people that want to be police, then all you're left with is the abusive police officers. So that's kind of the double-edged sword in this thing. If you did take my idea about firing police officers after a couple allegations of abuse, then a lot of these police departments in high crime areas, all their cops are going to get fired and they'll have no police. So it's up to the police to try to incentivize more people to want to work in law enforcement in a highly regulated system with high oversight. How do you fix that? I don't know, but either way, I think if you were an abusive cop, you should be fired, okay? Another thing that I think needs to happen more is I do believe there needs to be more work between social workers and police. Law enforcement and social work need to work more in tandem with each other, because a lot of times, probably a good majority of police calls have to do with mental health, drug abuse, things of that nature, which is not really a law enforcement issue. That's more of a public health issue. Mental health is a public health issue. Drug abuse is a medical condition. That is something that medical professionals and social workers need to be addressing, and not just cops, because cops are there to enforce the law, okay? So I think that if you're getting a call, if law enforcement is getting a call about someone with mental health, drug abuse problems, they should be going there every time in tandem with a social worker, because the social worker is better trained on how to deal, or a medical professional is better trained on how to deal with these types of individuals and are less reactionary than the police. But then at the same time, a lot of times as social workers, we get expected to go on home visits and meet people in the field, and we're in freaking dangerous situations. I don't think a social worker should be sent by themselves to someone with a mental health issue that's having a psychotic outburst. They do need to have some kind of backup with them. So my opinion on that is kind of a halfway opinion. I don't think we should get rid of the cops totally, but I think that there needs to be more formal collaboration with social workers and people in the medical field and law enforcement, rather than just having law enforcement deal with these people as criminals, okay? There needs to be more in tandem collaboration, okay? Take that how you want it. The next part I believe that we can do for police reform is traffic stops, okay? Now, if someone has a busted tail light, if someone runs a red light, okay, if someone's not really committing a crime, it's just a traffic violation, why does the police need to stop that person to give them a ticket? I mean, these situations, like, Philando Castile, perfect example. He was stopped for having, I think, a broken brake light or something like that, and then they pull him over for the brake light and end up killing and murdering the guy, okay? So what I would propose is that, hey, if someone has a broken tail light, just take the picture of the license plate and send them the ticket, and then a lot of these people could possibly still be alive because it avoids that interaction with the police, okay? Traffic enforcement, police shouldn't deal with that. That should be automated through cameras and dealt with the traffic violations department of whatever jurisdiction that you live in. And I think that by itself will eliminate a lot of police shootings. Most half of police interactions come from traffic stops. Okay, so if you can eliminate half of that, you're eliminating half of the freaking murders by the cops. And I did notice, in recent years, and I actually am in agreement with this, is that a lot of jurisdictions, they're doing this thing now where a cop will roll up behind you. They'll type your license plate number in their system, and they're looking to see if you have a warrant, right? Okay, if you have a freaking warrant, then sure, the cops have the right to stop you because you have a freaking warrant. And I've noticed, since they've started doing this, I haven't gotten pulled over once. I've noticed cops come up behind me maybe thinking, oh, this cat's got a warrant, but then they type in my license plate and they realize I don't have a freaking warrant, and they keep it moving. So in my opinion, shit like that is a positive, because then you're not just stopping random people. Because in my experience, the vast majority of the time the cops are stopping you for a bullshit reason, and then they just want to run your name and see if you have a warrant so they can take you to jail. But it's like, just because I look like I'm a criminal don't mean I'm not. So those are little reforms that I do think, some people may think it's an invasion of privacy, but for me personally, ever since they have implemented that procedure, I've never been pulled over. Because don't have no freaking warrants, and I'm not a criminal. So I think that is a positive. But then at the same, just like I said, people want to act like this police reform thing is new. The police reform thing has been going on. I've noticed, like growing up in San Francisco, the San Francisco police was a strong squad. They'd roll up on you, stop you for no reason, hit you with a freaking, I seen them run after a homeless guy and just crack him in the head with freaking nightsticks. But I've noticed, lately, despite the fact that sometimes they still do be killing people, SF police is hella soft now. One of them even actually apologized to me like a month ago about, crossing the street. He didn't let me cross the street, and then he apologized. And I'm like, bro, I'm not even freaking tripping off you, bro. But I've noticed that the police has in San Francisco has become a lot softer. Now there's positives to that, because you get less harassment and shit like that. But then the negative, like you go to a place like the Tenderloin, maybe there should be a little bit more police enforcement, not necessarily of the drug users, but of the drug sellers, So on one hand, it's good the police has gotten soft because there's less abuse, but then at the same time, crime in certain places begins to become out of control and unacceptable. That's one of the reasons why I don't think you need to defund them. You just need to change and reform them. Although some people say reform will never change. Fuck them. Okay. And like I said before, there needs to be some kind of federal standards. One thing I do like about America is that it's not... Some people want to say America's authoritarian, centralized power, but in my opinion, it's not really. Even look at this coronavirus. There's federal standards, and then there's state standards, and then even in California, Gavin Newsom says, well, I'm going to set this state standard, but the counties, y'all can deal with that however you want. So that's the good thing about America, is that there is the right of a decentralized autonomy. There is federal laws, but when it comes down to it, the laws and how they are enforced, and the attitude of law enforcement, criminal justice, or anything is really the decision of that city and county. But in this aspect, I feel like, there has to be a federal standard with enforcement of police abuse. You shouldn't be able to be fired from one county for abuse and go move to another county. There needs to be communication federally. Okay, so in that aspect, some people would say that's authoritarian, but I believe, after 2 or 3 allegations of abuse, 1 allegation of egregious abuse, you should be done from law enforcement altogether. You shouldn't be able to work no sheriffs, no local police, FBI, whatever, ICE, DEA. You should be done. You should be barred from all of it, and there should be a database to track that type of behavior, okay? And like I said before, there needs to be a lot more focus and development on the field of mental health, drug abuse, professionals. You know, we're getting a little bit better than that as a society, but they need to take the lead on dealing with that issue and just have law enforcement as a backup. And you know, a lot of people want to complain about society and about law enforcement and blah 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 blah, but would never be a social worker or would never be a cop. Those are both very high stress jobs that we have. As a social worker, that's a very high stress job, high turnover. You're dealing with a lot of crap. You got a lot of people complaining, but yet they will never actually do the professional work to try to help society. So whatever we need to do to incentivize people to say, hey, look, a career in social work is a good career to be in. You know, a lot of people don't want to be social workers. A lot of people are too scared, they can't handle it. A lot of people don't want to be cops, they're too scared, they can't handle it. How do we incentivize people to go into those fields, okay? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, you could say higher pay, but now everybody wants to defund the police. Maybe we should shift a lot of that police money into social work, social services, and like I said, take a more holistic approach to it, because the police are dealing with a lot of things that are a public health issue and not a criminal issue. And there is some overlap between the both of them, right? But how can we shift a lot of that police money and resources into rehabilitation, social work, recovery, mental health, rather than boom, boom, bam, you're dead, or I'm going to put you in jail. Okay? And another thing, the police needs to be a little bit more demilitarized. You know, it's cool, they got their pistols and their rifles, but then you got like places with police departments buying freaking military tanks and armored vehicles and all that kind of shit. You know what I mean? You really don't need that. Maybe some cities you might need a SWAT team or something like that, but a lot of, you know, when you look at a place like San Leandro, California, and they're ordering a fucking giant military tank, does San Leandro really need a giant military tank? No. So in that aspect, they should be taking the money they're going to spend on a military tank, and like I said, put that in the whole social work aspect of things, okay? And another thing, you know, cops, speaking of mental health, every cop should be held to a high standard. You know, you want to, like I said, they should all have 4-year degrees at least. They should all be highly trained. They should not have any mental health issues. If there's any issues of mental health, things like that, they should be, you know, let go, you know, whatever, fired, and then they can go apply for freaking SSI, mental health disability, or something like that. You know, we need to make sure all the police is not going through mental health issues, not being, and you know, it's about defunding, not funding. You know, the more you defund the police, the more police is working longer hours, and they are not in the right mind, and then you add racism and all that bullshit on top of that. That is a explosive situation. Okay? And then you need to stop getting these scary, a lot of these police officers are just scared. You can't hire no freaking scared punk police officer, because then they're going to go out there, be scared for no reason, and start shooting people. And you know, you look at places like Oakland, San Francisco, a lot of these cops come from freaking Castro Valley and some suburb, and they can't relate to anything that's going on in an urban area, and they get scared and they end up shooting people. and then they're too scared to even do their freaking job. So you need to get more. How do you incentivize more people locally to participate in law enforcement or oversight of law enforcement? They do have community, police boards and things like that. So that's something you can encourage. If you don't want to become a cop, how are you going to make cops more accountable? And actually protesting right now has been working great. All these people is a great way. All these people is protesting, and all of a sudden you're seeing all these police reforms in the process of happening. Is it going to make anything perfect? No, but it's a step in that direction, because I can guarantee you, if this type of shit, it's gonna still keep going on. That's inevitable. There's always gonna be some bad cops, but the difference is, if these cops keep getting off with manslaughter or no jail time or anything like that, this country is about to freaking erupt, and that's not going to be good. There needs to be justice, which is the last part of this. I talked about what reforms I think should happen with training, recruiting, retaining, and doing the job of police. But the final and probably most important aspect of this is there needs to be justice served for police that abuse their power. And it doesn't just mean you get fired from your job. That it means that if you kill and murder people, that you are going to go be prosecuted by the full extent of the law as any other citizen was not. And that's the more important piece, because cops are not getting a just sentencing. They're getting let off the hook, and we've seen this year after year after year. It's almost an expectation. So if you're a police and you could just shoot somebody and do a little stanky freaking 2 years at most for manslaughter, then of course you're going to keep abusing your power, because you're never going to be held accountable. So lastly, there needs to be justice. There needs to be police who murder people and do criminal activity need to be prosecuted in court and need to be punished just like anybody else would be punished, okay? But that's pretty, that's a little brief overview of my thoughts on this whole topic. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment. I know it may not be the most popular view. I'm neither to one side. I don't think you should totally defund the police, because they are necessary, I think, in some aspects. But at the same time, the police is freaking abusing people and not being properly trained and doing work that really has nothing to do with law enforcement, but more has to do with mental health, public health, which has nothing to do with their freaking field. And how are we going to get social work, public health professionals to work in tandem with law enforcement to really actually address a lot of these needs? And then other reforms, like I said, about traffic stops, things like that. So that's my video. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I will see y'all next time. Hopefully I'll be posting more videos. I know I haven't done a video for like 3 months, something like that. But have a great day, and I will talk to y'all later.